Well, again, everyone, hope you're having a fairly decent 2024 at this point in time. Things have been kind of weird for me, kind of up and down in weird places and whatnot. And that's why it took a little longer to get around to this whole thing, because I was going to do this like right after the new year, and things just didn't quite go the way they were supposed to, because there are certain other things coming up and things absorbing my time. And then this past week in Chicago, it's been like negative degrees, and so my space heater was like running nonstop for days on end in here. So it's like, I don't want to turn the thing off for like 30, 40 minutes and have it get really cold in here. So it's like, okay, I got to put that off and stuff like that here and there. So we're settling down and talking about things. Now that we've got a bunch of things out for January, got to recap a few things here and there, because we got at the end of December, we got out the Poseidon commentary for the remake. And then I got my retro video series episode on the numerous versions of Blade Runner out, which has been performing pretty damn well. And that was a little bit of a thing getting it done, but let me finish the recap here. So we got up to that. Then Steve and me sat down, record our two new commentaries for January. The first one released was Cujo, which we've been pushing off, because we originally wanted to hit it in the 40th anniversary date on August last year, but the Kino Lorber release didn't come out until October. Then we kind of got jammed up on certain things. So we figured January, where I had to slot in for Needful Things, which is the other one we've done. So I figure double header for King. Been a long time since we did one, and so we got both those commentaries recorded. So Cujo's out now. Needful Things will be out a little later in the month. And, of course, I also got out a new review for the original Mission Impossible movie. So if you haven't checked it out, go check it out after this video is done and stuff like that. So pretty regular output of stuff. Pretty decent track record I've got going on so far. And coming up next, the thing I'm transitioning into is finally doing the Exorcist 3 video. Now this is again a redux one from the one I did back in 2013, which is pretty short, not terribly in depth, and really needed a far better presentation, far more in depth, far more revamped quality. So this is fully all in. I know it's been a couple months since I actually did the original sort of set of research I did back in October, when I was kind of aiming for that, but then weird things went on, and just like the cosmic forces in the universe were just completely at odds with me getting anything done whatsoever. So I put it off on the shelf, figure I'll come back to it, circle back around to get other things done, and now I'm figuring out to get up on it now. So I've done a few things to kind of prime myself to get into it and stuff like that. Heard a couple of podcasts I listened to. I kind of went off and checked out their kind of discussions here and there, just to kind of get my gears rolling the whole thing. And there's something else from my media pickups and Christmas stuff in that regard that I watched last night that also helps in that regard as well. So all these good things. So Exorcist 3 video is the next one coming up. I'm not forcing it. When I feel I'm ready, I'm going to go ahead for it, because I got kind of this one day on, one day off schedule the next several days. So it's kind of hard to get really into a groove on certain things. So I'll do things as I feel I can get up on them and get this seed planted about this piece of research and get refreshed on other things here and there. So I'll just kind of go at my own pace and figure out where things are going to land. But probably sometime next week, if it's not early in the week, then maybe the end of next week. So we'll have the Needful Things commentary that kind of buffer things out in between stuff I did for Mission Impossible and getting up to Exorcist 3. So that'll land somewhere in the middle there probably. And so kind of bridge the gap so things aren't too sparse around here in that regard. So that's everything that's going off in that regard. And like I said, with the Blade Runner video was kind of a thing. Now, one thing I did grab in terms of helping out with the video is the fact that I knew, like I mentioned in the video, there was certain color timing differences with the old director's cut master. And I was like, well, I don't want to pay too much to grab this old DVD for like 5 seconds worth of footage. It's not worth it for that. And so it's like him and a Han, kind of thinking maybe I can grab it from some other source, like some of that unicorn sequence footage was used in that Mark Kermode documentary from 2000. I figure worst comes to worst, I'll just grab it from there and kind of use it here and there. But thankfully, well, positive or negative is the whole thing. The FYE near me in the mall is closing down. And so things are getting marked down like crazy, and they did have a copy of the old 1997 DVD of the director's cut, so I got it for like $1 and change. This and a few other things. But I figured, hey, I went out there because my sister had stopped over at the Kohl's in the mall, and said, hey, the whole thing's got all these signs, mark it down, close it down, stuff like that. So I figured a couple days later I went and swung over there and kind of checked things out here and there. And thankfully they had one copy of this and got it for, like I said, basically nothing. So that was very much a good thing on that regard. But in between there, before that and then after that, I shot the video. I shot the video twice in its entirety. Because there was, in particular, with the Forever Cinematic movie reviews, I have a particular outfit I have. The black dress shirt, the black suit jacket, stuff like that. A certain presentation I have for how I want to look on screen. The retro view stuff has always been kind of fashioned to be a little bit more laid back. That's why I'm not standing up, I'm sitting on a stool. If you haven't figured that out, it's like a certain different presentation, a certain different way of feeling about presenting things. And I kind of, it's not like a certain outfit I would have worn doing an update video, but for whatever reason, what I was wearing for the old footage, just like, it just doesn't feel right. There's just something about how I dress myself. Now, like I said, it's regular casual clothes I have, but there's just a tinge of something that I need to have a certain quality of outfit or something like that. There's just something that just felt like it was too laid back. It's like I never wore this outfit before for the retro video series. It just felt too to me. And it was just kind of spiking in my brain. I just can't get around how this is affecting how I'm viewing my presentation and everything. And I edited some stuff here and there, and it just kept hemming and hawing at me like there's something wrong about this. There's something wrong about how it looks, how it feels. And so I went back and reshot the entire thing with the outfit I have in the final video, which is the black dress shirt and the denim jacket. Now, it's the particular type of thing. It's like I never wanted to wear the suit jacket for the retro video series because it's just like specific type of things that make a differentiation. There are different types of presentations, different types of videos. I don't want to have that much of a similarity between the two of them. And so, various types of things. Just things that kind of dissected in my mind that have a certain look for that video and then a certain style of look for the other one. So, I figured it might be good to kind of stick with basically this look. I used to kind of do the black denim jacket, but that one's so ratty. I really can't wear this much anymore. Just, it's got stuff, threads flying off, frayed edges, everything. There's a big hole in the elbow. My sister did buy me a new one, but this was right before the Christmas, right before I had my hospitalization for my blood sugar and everything like that. Then I lost a ton of weight, so the 3XL version doesn't fit me, and I've never actually had to wear it for anything, so it's just like a complete waste. So, anything like that. So, behind-the-scenes information in that regard, but I reshot it. I think it came out maybe a little bit better in some places. I think retro video series, there's a lot of times where I just have to reshoot a lot of stuff because it's a lot of information dumps and stuff like that. It's much more presentation oriented in that regard, and trying to present information is different than presenting an opinion. So it's very much a different thing where I can't just kind of go off and kind of little tangents here there. When we're doing information, you got to be a little bit more direct and concise on certain things. So going through it a second time, it's a little bit more embedded in my brain, so I can kind of recite it off more from memory than kind of just trying to fixate on the notes and stuff like that. So here and everywhere, I've never really completely made a perfect process of doing retro videos. There's a lot of reshoots, like I said, and sometimes I do reshoot the entire video because it just isn't working for some reason or another. But sometimes the old footage comes back into play where I can still take some of the audio I had from the other thing and kind of plug it in here and there where okay, this one kind of explains things just a little bit better with how I'm cutting it together and stuff like that. So sometimes it does kind of circle back into some places and do good things. So hope everyone really enjoyed that video. Mission Impossible, just a few minor things I had to just do, like audio re-recording and stuff like that, just to clear up a few pieces of information that didn't come across before. Like, I entirely forgot to talk about Rob Bottin's work in the entire film the first time I shot it, so went back, edited it in and stuff like that, so that worked out nicely. But anything in that regard. So the Stephen King commentaries, real fun stuff. The Needful Things one is going to be very interesting for you guys to listen to. It is off the theatrical cut. We talked about the TV cut, which I did watch. Steve did not watch it because he'd done an episode on the film for his podcast, To the Table, about right about the time the 4K came out, about late July or something else like that. And so he was like, if I go off and watch the TV cut so soon after watching the theatrical cut in that regard, after doing a big discussion, it might kind of just platinum out to a certain degree, so I didn't go off and watch that version, so I had to kind of carry that in some regard, but thankfully I did sit through the 3-hour thing. I didn't find it terribly bad, but we do have a lot of things to comment about differences and how things kind of flowed between the two different versions, so you'll definitely be looking for that about the next 7 to 10 days or something else like that, so keep an eye out in that regard, and all the different things going on. So I got a lot of media pickups, a lot of Christmas stuff here and there and everywhere. Like I said, I did purchase the 4K of Needful Things. I do need to get the one for Cujo. We used it. We watched from Steve's copy of the 4K, which looks fabulous. Great bonus features in that regard. This one's really good. Not as many bonus features. This has one interview from the screenwriter and an audio commentary on the actual theatrical cut. Now, I do mention it in the commentary, but the TV cut in this whole thing, they did a lot of post-processing on it. So it's very much kind of like an AI upscale type of thing, up to 1080p from a broadcast standard F master. So there's a lot of kind of like image abnormalities in some places, like frames blending and things blurring together. It's a little weird in that regard. Apparently the German version from whoever the hell it was over there, Koch Media, as it was before, is much more like a direct port. Just took the actual capture of the entire standard F master. I think they stuck it on a DVD, and that was it. So I don't think they did much of anything to really kind of muddle it around to try to enhance it and come into kind of weird problems in that regard. So do recommend it, but definitely look for it. It's way better than the old Blu-ray. Way better. They do have just a standalone remastered Blu-ray instead of a 4K edition that also has a TV cut on it. So if you're not up on 4K, if you want to maybe not spend as much for the 4K, you can still get a remastered Blu-ray from King Lorber in that regard. But thing I did watch last night, which I did get for Christmas, is I finally got the second sight 4K of The Changeling. Now, this is something I had on my list forever and ever, and the price never really came down anyway because, again, it's an import. Because the Severin release here in the U.S., you don't really want to get it. Mainly because the color grading has a lot of beat red faces. They didn't do a great job on the whole thing with the HDR or anything like that. There's a few clips. If you go to High Def Digest's YouTube channel, they do have a clip from their release to kind of show you how their grading came off. The grading on this one is much, much, much better. The sound was pretty good. It felt a little... They have a 2.0 stereo one. Then they have a 5.1 remix, which was on the old 2018 versions from both companies. And it was maybe just a tad weak in some places. Not terribly much. But sometimes, because of the limitations of the very analog sensibilities of, especially the dialogue of the whole thing, there's certain characteristics about the recordings that kind of don't have the greatest fidelity or anything like that. So it's a little not terribly muffled. It's very, very analog quality in that regard, how it sounds. So it was a fairly low budget sort of Canadian horror haunted house thriller in that regard and stuff like that. So it's not like the highest end type of thing you're getting, like it's a Spielberg movie or something else like that. You got money to spare in that regard. So there's certain limitations from the source material itself, but I thought they did a pretty damn good job with the remastering because it's I believe it's from the interpositive on this whole thing. So they usually take it from the original camera negative that have the highest quality source. This was the next step down from that. And it's a film that's always had a bit of a grainy appearance in some places, a little bit inconsistent grain to some degrees here and there. But I thought they did a pretty nice job to manage that and not kind of go overboard with it or just kind of leave it as it is. So they didn't overboard anything in that regard. They did a nice, even job of the color grading, HDR grading, and all that type of stuff. So I think everything came out very well. I did switch between the stereo and the 5.1. They felt pretty comparable in terms of like the audio levels and stuff like that. So I just wanted to make sure that, because I did turn off my space heater partway into the film because it was kind of interfering with hearing the dialogue clearly enough in that regard. So anything like that. So it's not like the biggest bombastic, clearest sonic experience in that regard, but from its limitations from what it was before, I think they did a pretty good job to maintain what the film should sound like in that regard. So there's just a standard release. There's nothing else about the 4K disc with all the bonus features on it, not even a remastered 1080p disc in that regard. So I'm happy with it. I still have my old Severin release, which was the fact that, mentioned before, When Severin put out the thing in 2018, the first issue had problems with it because I think there was issues with missing sound effects in the 5.1 mix. I think there was like a missing frame somewhere in the whole thing, so they reissued it. But when they put out the second version, they didn't put the restored picture on. It's still like the raw scanner or something else like that. So you got the fixed audio, but the picture was wrong. But then they wouldn't do a third. They did press a third version, but they would not issue another replacement plan on top of that, which is fucking crap. Because I remember from my Lionheart MVD Rewind Blu-ray, they had some problems. The first pressing the whole thing, the audio was weird. Like there was some kind of weird flanging thing or something else like that. Something is just out of sync or whatnot, out of alignment on one of the audio tracks on the theatrical cut. And so they issued it again. But the fact of the matter is when they put out the second discs, the plant printed the wrong disc. They still printed the exact same discs again. And so they did yet another replacement plan to correct it 100% corrected. So I finally got the whole thing. Sadly, a friend of mine who is overseas could not get the replacement because they wouldn't do international shipping in that regard. So some people lost out, but at least here domestically, things got corrected in that regard. Severin would not go that extra mile, so you'd actually have to spend the money and buy it directly from them again to make sure you actually got the version 3 disc for the changeling. And so that completely was really just a deal breaker for me. And again, when I saw the color rating they had for the 4K, I'm not dealing with that. So I waited for a second site to get their thing up, and the results were very damn good. I saw screen caps and stuff like that, and watching it, they did a wonderful job in the whole thing. So I definitely recommend that 100% on that regard. And the other thing I got for Christmas, I got that for Christmas, and I got the Point Break 4K for Christmas. Now, I did throw this in, it has Dolby Vision. It's also from Interpositive. So, interesting type of things, how they kind of pulling for that, and this jumped around from different sort of distributors. Originally, it was 20th Century Fox. I think my Blu-ray is Warner Brothers, because the thing was Largo Entertainment, which is now owned by, absorbed by Intermedia. And so they're the ones also doing the K-19, the Widowmaker one, the other Catherine Bigelow film, came out in 4K from Shout Studios. And so I'm not entirely certain who exactly has the original negative to find in that regard. So since it jumped around for different distributors, it might have got lost somewhere. It might have been in someone else's position. They won't give it up, or who knows what else, or whatever. But they did this from the Interpositive. It looks pretty good. Color-wise, it's really bold. I did find, trying to watch it Dolby Vision, it did feel a bit dark. Not heat dark, but it did feel like it was a little dim for something that's supposed to be like bright sunshine, Southern California sun type of film in that regard. So I just skipped through some things here and there to check a couple of scenes here and there and stuff like that. Audio sounded pretty good. I've read a few people saying maybe it's not quite as good as the one on the old Blu-ray. Here, there, and everywhere. They might compress it, might have done some other things with it, some EQ, who knows. So there's no remix or something like that. I think it's just, it's just a 2.0 and a 5.1 DTS Master Audio in the whole thing. But in that regard, there's no new bonus features, so you're basically buying this just for the new 4K presentation of the whole thing. If you have a really good, like maybe like OLED, I think it'll really pop. For my setup here, where I have a Sony X85J, if I'm correct on that thing. I think that's right. If it's not, I'll put it down here on the screen for you guys. But I think it's an X85G 43-inch. So it's a pretty decent model. That's about, I don't know, upwards of $800 or something like that here and there. So it was pretty good. It was way better than the Toshiba one I had when I first delved into 4K. It's like, man, the blacks on this thing look crap. So I got this thing, and these look way, way better in that regard. So it's a pretty decent model that doesn't get up towards like the real heavy hitters in the whole thing. But I think I was kind of batting around here and there about the whole presentation. Do I really love it? But I'll sit on it. I'll keep it. I'll hold on to the whole thing because it's Point Break. I love Point Break. I've been waiting for a remaster. I think I'd be really kind of gutting myself if I kind of like, it's not completely the way I'd hope for it to look or whatnot. But that's just nitpicking in that regard. I think it did a really good job for something that's from an Interpositive, which again is one step from the original negative, which has maybe a little extra grain on it, but it has much more the original color grading the entire director intended for the entire film, so I have a much more of a clearer template from how to grade the film in that regard. So anything like that. So I think it's worthwhile. Definitely worthwhile. I definitely wanted that whole thing. And there's a bunch of other things I was hoping for Christmas, because I had just like a laundry list of stuff that I was like hoping for. I was hoping for maybe like the Babylon 5 complete series Blu-ray, which is about $90 right now. I was looking to get the complete series of Star Trek Enterprise, because I was watching through season 3. I got like halfway through it before my sister's Paramount Plus subscription ended. And so I kind of want to watch the rest of season 3 and see where that goes in due time and whatnot. But there's certain things I was looking forward. It's like maybe the Clue 4K, but like for $30 right now, I think I'll wait for like a particular sale that goes off on the whole thing. But a bunch of things. I'd be here all day talking about various things if I ran down the whole list of everything like that. But the other stuff I grabbed when I went to FYE for the Blade Runner the old Blade Runner DVD in that regard, is the fact that I got Phil Collins' debut album here, Face Value. But this is a very particular type of thing, because I was looking through, because In the Air Tonight is one of my most particular songs that I have a great gravitation towards and stuff like that. So mainly from Miami Vice and stuff like that. But I was looking around online, and if you go to the Steve Hoffman forums, it's like audiophiles all over the place talking about the very best mastered versions of different albums and all the different things. So much. I go there so much, looking up different things, and I was particular about finding the best version of that song. Now, it's not the new remastered version from the iTunes or something else like that. Not that. It's not that. It's not anything that's on compilation discs or anything that's particularly well noted. This is particular because it's from almost like a silent remaster, silent reissue from a guy who's not even credited on the goddamn thing, apparently. From Barry Diament, pretty much pretty well-regarded type of guy. There's an entire thread where he's actually answering questions about this remaster so much. So he put it out maybe around 88 or something else like that. So not too many years after the original CD was released, but there's a particular type of thing where he pretty much went into the mastering studio and kind of worked on the whole thing and kind of gave it off to Phil Collins, and they kind of approved it. So it's kind of a phantom sort of reissue in that regard. And there's only I'll put a link in the whole thing below. But the main thing is the information is in the little laser etched sort of indicias. I don't think you can even see this on a screen or whatnot, but all these little markings that are around the ring inside of this thing tell you exactly what pressing you're looking at. And there's an entire thread appeal pinpointing this based on different peak decibel levels and various other things and dynamic ranges here and there and everywhere. And I did find this one there, and it does sound particular because that drum roll in the Air Tonight, there are certain masterings where you can't hear this part of it, where there's actually a bass drum, there's a kick drum in that entire thing, where a lot of different masterings of it, you can't pick that up. But you can in this version, and it sounds very, very good. There's almost barely anything it did to it. It's much more EQ'd flat to a certain degree. He just did particular type of things that just bring out the best sonic qualities overall. So there's very much consensus that this is the best version to find in that regard for this album on any format. So not the things you're going to find on digital. They sound fine, not quite as good as this. And I'm not even familiar with any other songs on this album, but I got it for almost the same amount as I got the Blade Runner thing, so it was barely anything. I took the sticker off, the price tag off the front already, so there's nothing on that. And my bun sport's falling down here. And I also decided to grab up because I was letting Judas Priest playing in the background one day. I was working on the computer, and I decided to grab up because I have all the other albums from British Steel up to Painkiller, but I never had Ram It Down. And maybe it's not the most regarded album in that regard, because it's right after Turbo, or they did the much more of the synthy type of sound and stuff like that. And maybe it wasn't, that one probably got a little bit of criticism in some places, but this one's still has some of the synth stuff in it, but it's much more kind of like longer form, kind of involved songs in certain ways. So it's a little bit more towards the the harder heavy metal edge to certain degrees. And this one I got, again, from that FYE for almost nothing. And it was the main thing, again, with the Steve Hoffman forums, because this was kind of the point where I think I kind of jumped more into those forums to kind of pinpoint certain things. I was trying to, because I had the bulk of the remasters they did about 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. And I was kind of looking into like, oh, what are people saying about this whole thing? Is it really as good as I think it is? And people are saying it's terrible. The remasters of the Judas Priest albums are not well done. They're not well EQ'd. They're mastered almost a brick wall to a certain degree. So when I got, a couple of years ago, went out and grabbed and hunted down all the original CD pressings of the stuff, I could definitely tell the fact that there's a lot of stuff on the remasters where things are blown out. There's a lot more crunch to it because it's more distorted. It's like, not going back to that stuff, not going back to it. So this was kind of the last one I had to grab for just this bulk of stuff, but I do have to get back to, I think it's the Hellbent for Leather one because I have the remastered version. I have to get the more classic issuing on CD for that type of stuff. So, good type of stuff. I have all this stuff. It just sounds really good. The only thing I have to do kind of when I rip them for my iTunes or whatnot is just kind of go to the options, kind of raise up the sort of volume level because those like 80 CDs were kind of mastered a little bit quiet to a certain degree. So there's a lot of headroom on the entire thing. So to kind of match the entire thing, because I don't do sound check on my iPhone because it does kind of lower all the decibel levels. So I really want to maintain what I have there. So I kind of go into the settings for all the songs and whatnot, all the albums, and kind of raise the bass volume level up. So I don't have to keep futzing around with the volume level on my devices. But some other stuff I did get, because now we're moving on to different media, is the fact that, excuse me, for Christmas, my sister also got me a hardcover edition of Tom Taylor's debut run on Nightwing, Leaping into the Light. Now, I haven't read any of Tom Taylor's stuff, but like I said, I was going through the Tim Seeley stuff, the older ones I had for these trade paperbacks. And the third volume was kind of, I wasn't quite loving it so much because it was kind of feeling very episodic. It's like every single issue kind of introduces a new villain that you think is the main villain, but then like, oh, well, he's not the main guy. Another guy, the next issue, he's the next guy up. And just feeling a little rat chasing his tail around type of stuff. I wasn't really endearing towards it. So I figure, let me check out Tom Taylor's stuff because he's the one who is who's still working on Nightwing and Titans and stuff like that, and getting a lot of recognition for it. So I figured I'd check this out, and this was the hardcover edition, which I think was just a little bit cheaper than the paperback version on Amazon. So I put that up here. Have not read through this, but I kind of was flipping through it earlier, and there's just some dynamic artwork in the whole thing that looks really good. The use of color in this whole thing is really just pretty spectacular. Just really great art from Bruno Redondo, and as I'm mentioning, like Teen Titans and stuff like that in the whole thing. So little things here and there. So I definitely something I want to get through and just kind of delve into this run in that regard. So interesting type of stuff. I really want to get into this thing. It looks wonderful. The cover looks wonderful, and like I said, this is a hardcover. It has the sort of dust jacket on it. Then it has much more just the regular cover artwork that I was kind of showing you from the inside panels there. But really looking forward to this whole thing because the thing I was liking about that third volume from Tim Seeley is that the fact they were teaming up Nightwing with Damian Wayne Robin. I was just loving that dynamic, but the storyline was just kind of not quite getting it over for me. But anyway, I finally did go back into a comic shop after I kind of just flattened out and just couldn't keep up with it in certain places here over the last half of last year. And I did pick up my since I left off so many months ago, it was a little bit of a strain grabbing this stuff to kind of finish off the arcs I was going on with Superman here, because I picked up issue 5 of Superman here from Joshua Williamson, and the fact that I grabbed up the Superman annual, which is supposed to, it doesn't really close off the arc, but this is the whole thing where they kind of finish off this part for the first volume of this run for the trade paperbacks and stuff like that, which is hitting pretty much like the hardcover or whatnot, but anything like that. The collected edition is hitting now, so I figured, well, these are the parts of the collected edition that are hitting now, so maybe if I grab the single issues now, and maybe I can wait a couple months until they get the next volume out. Maybe just buy that as a certain thing for about $20, $25 instead of trying to keep buying like $5 issues or everything like that. So I was thinking about maybe that could be a way to go. But today I'd grab up Action Comics. This was the last piece I needed for the I think for this arc here they have here, which has all the stuff with Hank Henshaw, Cyborg Superman, interesting type of stuff, really good type of things. The entire Superman family, whatnot, so in the whole thing with John Kent and everyone else, Superboy and Kara, Supergirl, anything like that. So and it's also got back issues or whatnot, back stories or whatnot with like Lois and Steel and stuff like that. So, and that, like I said, this is the end of this arc. I was kind of batting around whether or not I was going to grab another issue, and it was just the fact that, okay, I know at the end of this entire arc, Superman teams up with John Constantine, and that's interesting to me, so I figured I'd grab this first one of Revenge of the Demon. So it's a 4-part arc, so I figured, okay, yeah, I could test this. I'd really, because I love myself some Hellblazer type of stuff here and there. In that regard, so I figured that'd be a very interesting pairing to delve into. And of course, they also have more stuff with stories at the back of the issue here, which is pretty much the Action Comics sort of deal here. It's not just Superman, it's all the ancillary Superman stuff around it. So you can bring in Steel, or you do a story about Kara Zor-El, or something else like that, or here and there and everywhere. So it's a nice idea. They kind of pack in a few extra pages here, get more story for it, and not really paying anything extra. So I think that's a really interesting idea to go forward for Action Comics. They kind of have a variety of things in that regard, and have much more bang for your buck in that regard. So I think that's a really cool type of thing. So rarely do I grab up variant covers because, again, they cost more, and I don't really need them because I'm not really a collector in that regard. I'm just looking for the good stories. And these are very good stories, as I've been looking at this Superman stuff since early last year. All fantastic type of stuff. I think it's Patrick Kennedy Johnson. I just want to make sure. Philip Kennedy Johnson. Philip Kennedy Johnson does the writing for Action Comics, the main storyline, and he does a wonderful job of it. Really good stuff. I just like, there are comparable tones between the two different books. Like I said before, the Josh Williamson Superman main comic is much more like DC, the DC animated universe type of stuff. The old Justice League stuff, Superman the animated series, that type of vibe so much. Action Comics has a much more different vibe because it's much more of a family dynamic type of thing, dealing with the overall super family in that regard. So it's very much a much more varied book in that regard, but it has a very good, solid writing, just like it has so much the core heart and soul of what Superman is. I think anyone who wants to get into Superman stuff, such good stuff in that regards on either one book, either one of these books. Wonderful type of stuff in that regard. So really good in that. Really, really good. I really like that stuff. So just finding the time to sit down and read this stuff, because there's a lot of stuff going on in certain places here. And like I said, I just kind of want to look back on 2023 in a positive light, because there's a lot of things that didn't go very well, things here and there. Even in the beginning of this year, my car battery was dying out, and I had to get jumped 3 times in 1 week, and then we had to buy a new battery for the whole thing, so that kind of put a damper on the first week of the year. And then we had the cold this week, and if I hadn't changed the battery, the car would not have gone anywhere. It had some trouble kind of turning over a little bit here and there because it was so damn cold. With that failing battery, it would have been just dead completely. So a little stumbling blocks to begin this whole year, but I want to look back on the positives I had last year. Again, getting back in the comic stuff, it's like reading these wonderful stories. Just so good. Such great writing, such great art, great storytelling overall. The Nightwing stuff I picked up. Again, the first 2 volumes, that Tim Seeley arc, I think that's wonderful stuff for Dick Grayson. Wonderful stories overall. Just really, really good stuff. It really shows the lightness, the brightness, the hope, the optimism of that character there. Contrast to Batman's much more darker, a little bit more, not so much pessimistic, but a little bit more kind of tragic, brooding type of stuff in that regard. Such a great dynamic in that regard, just showing that contrast of style there. And I love Batman so much, but reading that Nightwing stuff just really just inspires me so much. It's so wonderful overall. And last year I took my first paid vacation, first paid vacation week off from work in ever. And it was so good. The fact that I pinpointed in like late April. I thought, like, okay, the weather's going to be a little bit nicer at this point in time. It's going to be kind of warmed up to a certain degree. I can go out and do some good things. I went off to the Field Museum, which I hadn't been to in just freaking forever. And it was such a wonderful experience going there, seeing all the exhibits, exploring the whole place, going along the lakeshore. Wonderful type of stuff. I just really just had a wonderful time of it. And then again, the next day after that, I went to that Star Trek Picard finale in IMAX. And that was a wonderful type of stuff. Just like rediscovering Trek has been one of the greatest things of the last year. Just like the new stuff, some of the new stuff they're putting out. That final season Picard, wonderful. Like I said, I got the Blu-ray. I got the replacement disc for the one disc on the whole thing. Wonderful type of stuff. Strange New Worlds, I haven't got on so hard, but I really kind of want to get more into it. So I'm kind of like, maybe I'll just, I've enjoyed what I've seen. But I haven't really kind of grasped onto it so hardcore in that regard. But I think I really want to grab those seasons and whatnot on 4K or something else like that. And on Netflix, I've just been watching Star Trek Prodigy, that animated series they kind of canned off of Paramount Plus because it really wasn't getting the numbers. It's fantastic. I so enjoy this thing. It's so wonderful. It's made for a younger audience to be much more of an introduction into Trek. So people who are already familiar with it can go along with it, but anyone who's not already familiar with Star Trek, it just lays it out so very well. All these characters kind of come across this prototype Starfleet ship that had been crashed on this planet, where they were all kind of like slaves or whatnot. They're all those prisoners kind of working in a kind of camp or whatnot, and they kind of take it off and just come off this journey of becoming friends in this crew, and people depend on one another. And it's a wonderful story that has, it's almost like Star Wars and a Star Trek mold to a certain degree. It's like there's certain elements in it that feel more Star Wars exotic to certain degrees or whatnot. A little bit more mythology to certain things here and there that feel a little bit more Star Wars, but you definitely have all the Star Trek feelings about it all. The projection of the themes and all the different things going on, the whole thing, being cooperative and learning to work together, and the optimism and stuff like that, all that type of stuff. It's a really, really wonderful show. I've gotten through the first 10 episodes, and I still have to get through the rest of the 20-episode season, but I think it's wonderful. Fantastic stuff. Bringing back Janeway as a hologram, as a sort of mentor to the crew is wonderful. And then in the back half of the season, the actual Admiral Janeway comes into the entire storyline. So I think it's all wonderful, wonderful, wonderful type of stuff. So that's one of the great things, just seeing this new age of Star Trek pinning down the classic feels of Star Trek. Because there's a lot of stuff that was going on over a couple of years. Certainly it's got its fans, but a lot of people are just much more in love with that TOS or that TNG era type of stuff, where they weren't finding their groove in what was coming out at this point in time. But those shows, Final Season Picard, Strange New Worlds, Prodigy, they all wonderful type of things. Really couldn't get on to Lower Decks. It's just not my style. It's not the way they're going about the comedy being super wild and fast-paced, quick-witted. It just really wasn't my flavor in certain places here and there. So respect it, but it's not really my thing. But I did love the crossover episode they had with Strange New Worlds. Great type of stuff. So it's like there's some great Trek out there right now. There's brand new, fresh type of stuff. Fantastic storytelling. Great type of things overall. Recently, just to wrap things up, I did finish a short-form script I was working on. I started out somewhere around like May or June or whatnot. That kind of put it away for about 6 months. I kind of went back to it in December. And on January 1st, I did kind of finish up the last piece of the whole thing. But I'm not moving forward on it right now because things are just, it's not the right time for it. And I just want to move forward on things when it feels like the right time to move on certain things. Just want to do it because the script's done and let's rush it out and do things. No. Wait till things are in the right places where I feel like I can focus myself, because things going on all over the place in life in that regard. So I find the point where everything feels like it's in the right place. I can move forward on it. I feel confident. I feel focused and stuff like that. So we'll see where things go in that regard. And since I finished that, I was like, okay, well, I'm not moving forward on it. I'm not really doing anything with it. I don't feel quite the major sense of catharsis that it's finished or whatnot. So I started going back into this old script I had. Very big script. Now, if anyone's been along on this channel for a very long, long time, you'll know that there was, back in 2005, a short action thriller I was working on called Vengeance. It did fall apart. Logistics fell apart. People were no longer able to be committed to the entire thing. it just kind of broke apart and just couldn't come back together in certain places here. And so after things really were just concrete that it's not happening, the thing was not going to get finished, I started working on doing a feature film version of the whole thing, because before it was like 20, 25 pages. Stuff like that. Syndicate hitman gets betrayed by his people, left for dead, and he comes back for revenge. Very clear type of story in that regard. And I've been working on it ever since. On and off. I last worked on this thing back in September of 2020, where I got to the point where it was like, this thing is such a mess in the second act that at this point in time, I can't resolve fixing the problems that it has right now. And so I figured, let me try and go back with a different perspective, trying to find another way to go at it. I've been chipping at it over the last several days, and I've been untangling some of the mess, trying to find the things that kind of need to be inputted and kind of things that need to be completely removed from the whole thing, because there's been a lot of subplots in this whole thing. And some things like, okay, that's too much. That doesn't really fit. I can get rid of that. I kind of like this thing over here, but I really can't really justify it as thematically fits, but I can't really fit it as much because it's going to kind of clog up and expand the script out too much. That if anyone's going to say, oh, there's maybe trimming it down for about 5 or 6 pages, that'd probably be the one thing to get rid of the whole thing. So various things, like so much has been developed for the whole thing that's kind of gone by the wayside, and some things have been a little too hard to kind of push up against, because it's a script that exists from a certain point of view, certain taste perspective that I've had. Back when I started doing this whole thing, that I can't really overhaul it to such a degree where it doesn't really resemble what was before, and resembles more of the sort of things I've been trying to do now. So it's an interesting type of thing, not getting too much in details, but it's like a lot of things that I've been trying to write for the last several years is much more kind of like a female lead based type of thing, which just more intrigues me to a certain degree. I just want to kind of write that and find a different angle to approach certain subjects, certain things here. And there's certain other stories it's like, no, it's got to be a male lead. That's the way it feels to me. It has to be a male lead for this particular story here. But a lot of things I just kind of gravitate towards doing a female lead for, like, or it's an action thriller, or it's like a thriller, or it's just a detective noir type of thing. Here and there, it just feels much more interesting to me to do that angle for it. With Vengeance, it's very macho. A lot of macho stuff, testosterone, a lot of ego type of stuff with male characters. It's a little hard to find a way to interject something that's more balanced in that regard, where it's not so much that, and it's a little bit more balanced towards that type of quality and whatnot against that. So it's like every time I try to find a place to put a female character in, it's like, okay, I can write a good scene for that, but I have no idea where else this character fits in the rest of the story here, because there's nowhere to put it. And when I try to interject something else like that, something else that's like a female character is like, they're just a love interest, or they're just there to be the kind of like object of lust or something like that. It's like, that doesn't work. I don't like that. So it's a very difficult thing. It's got to be a very macho script. It's just got to be that. So I just kind of have to resign myself to that so much and kind of ride the wave of where the thing's going. I don't know if this is ever going to go anywhere. Right now, it's not even a dream project. It's an artistic challenge for me to get this script to a point where I feel like, yes, finally, after all these goddamn years, I have a point with it where I'm at peace with it. So I figured out a lot of the problems, and it feels like it flows to where a point I can be happy with it. So it's just a personal challenge to myself to make sure that I have something that I've been working on so very long that's actually gotten to a point where I feel like, yes, I can accept that and live with that where it is right now. So if there's any weird point in time, in some bizarre future or whatnot, where someone says, oh, I really like that thing you did. Do you have a feature film script? Like, oh yeah, I got something over here. I don't know if you're going to afford to make it, but it's there. So it's much more bigger scale type of thing than The Fixer or whatnot. So it's written like a full-blown Hollywood action feature in that regard. So interesting type of thing. So it takes cues from a lot of different things. The original short film was more like Desperado or Payback or something like that. As things are going on, it's kind of spread more towards like a Michael Mann type of flavor in a certain way, where it's like not like an action beat every 10 minutes or whatnot. It's much more character focused with some action peppered in there. So still things I need to find some balance for in that regard, but it's very much a thing where there's a lot of subplots where there's a lot of characters have their own stories just layered in over the main plot of the entire thing. So a lot of the characters I desperately love writing for them. Wonderful characters I really just have such an affection for. So I really want to take a lot of care integrating their stories into this entire script and make sure it feels like it's something I could really just show someone at a certain point in time where I feel confident about it and I feel like that's something I really would like to have made myself. So it's a long update, but like I said, there's a lot of things to cover. It's been a long time since the last one, and so I hope you guys have enjoyed anything I put out here. And like I said, we got the Needful Things commentary coming up very soon, about the next week or so. It'll hit. We'll see how things play, and see where things go with the Exorcist 3 video in that regard. So how fast or how gradual that moves along to a certain degree, we'll see how that goes, but definitely on that regard. And for after that, I might not go back to Retro Video Series quite so soon. I'm thinking about maybe doing that Casino Royale video in February. We'll see whether that happens. I might be grabbing that Vinegar Syndrome 4K set of the Prophecy films to maybe do a video on that, because the much more standard edition is coming out and it's about $40 or so. I can grab it from like Amazon with free shipping, so it's a lot more economical in that regard than various other things I was facing back on Black Friday, which would have been much more expensive in that regard. So I'm eyeing certain things here and there, and so we'll see where things go after I get through Exorcist 3 and where I feel like going. Retro Video Series, when I eventually do get back to it, the main idea right now is maybe doing the numerous versions of Star Trek the Motion Picture. But I got to compile a bit of a longer list of different topics I want to cover in due time in that regard. So here and there and everywhere, guys. So thanks so much, guys, for watching and sitting through this very, very long update. And thanks much. And contribute to the Patreon, the Super Things feature as well. Also, likes, commenting, subscribing if you haven't, and sharing links around for anything you enjoy here helps out immensely. So, guys, thanks much. Take care.